Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 343, Brahman, Purusha, Ishvara. But the being and action of the infinite.
Yeah, that's right. So, since we are coming after 1 week, we have to get the sense of continuity. So, I'll read out the summary of what you said in the previous para. Okay. First of all, we have a mystery. The mystery is that when we are in the physical world, we are seeing it as absolutely real, tangible, solid. I can touch it and I can feel its reality. I take my consciousness to the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. The world is not real anymore. So what is the truth? Is it this or is it that? That's what he is discussing. Okay? At every level you go, the reality seems to be changing. So what is this mystery? That's what he is discussed in this para. Okay? The previous one. The solution to the mystery, to this mystery, is not to be sought in the supreme reality, but in our own inability of limited consciousness. That means to say, as he has said elsewhere, I pointed out last time, in any act of knowledge, there is a knower, there is the to be known, and there is the knowledge that connects them. So, is the problem in the knower? No. Is the problem in the known? No. The problem is in the knowledge, at which level and what instruments of knowledge you are using. So if you are using defective instruments of knowledge, your knowledge will be defective. That's exactly the gist of the problem. But this you cannot discover unless you go to the supreme truth, which is the supermind. If you are stuck in the spiritual planes of consciousness, all philosophies can say, Mayavada, Buddhism, the world is unreal. And if you insist that it is partly real, okay, but not possible to put into words. Ineffable, can't put into words. That's all you can do. But when you go to the supramental level, then you know the mystery and you know you can solve the mystery. That is real, this is real, but not as we see it. What we are seeing is a semi-reality. It is reality in time and space. But there is a reality behind this transient reality which is permanent. And that's a divine presence in the physical world. That's a real solution, which Sri Aurobindo is giving us. The other philosophies can't. They insist that the world is unreal, don't worry about it. And the others, Shankara says, it's half real. Like the shadow, under certain circumstances it is real. The rainbow, it seems to be real, but you go there is no rainbow. Or the blue sky, there is no blue in the sky. So these are all the semi-realities, or realities in time and space. It gets born, it disappears. If it disappears, it can't be a reality. My body is being born, it dies. A tree is created, it comes into nature, after some time it dies. And that also goes on differing. A butterfly will last only for 1 week. A tree may last, in California, trees last for 400 years. These big, giant trees. A human being will last for 100 years. Okay?
But Sri Aurobindo counters all of this. He says, he counters all of this. He says even the body, it breaks down for the use of other things, right. And life continues.
That's right. There is a continuity of matter.
Yes.
Matter is real and permanent, but not the forms in them. Material forms are not permanent. So, I'm reading this is what he's saying. The solution to this mystery is not to be sought at the supreme level, nor in the physical world, but in our own inability of limited consciousness. The spirit is infinite and our mind is finite. How can the latter comprehend the former? The small, the lesser, can never know the bigger, the greater. our perception of nature is based on our limited sense knowledge and mental circumscription. Our mental knowledge also is very limited. According to that, we are understanding things. There are different orders of reality. There is matter, life, and mind. What is applicable to one is not applicable to the others. The rational mind of man cannot grasp the nature of the infra-rational matter and life, nor can it comprehend the supra-rational. We don't understand the behavior of animals, and we don't understand the something above us. A yogi or mother, how she behaves, we don't know. And people used to find even fault with mother. And Srimad used to say, you are judging with your own limited mind something which is infinite. How can you judge? Okay, so the finite cannot understand the infinite. Even on one level of matter itself, what is law at the atomic level is not the law at the interstellar level. On the surface of the earth, gravitation is there, that's a law. And you go 100 miles up, there's no gravitation. So things go on changing even in one world, let alone other worlds. That's what he's saying. How can you understand? So, the finite cannot understand the infinite, and even on one level of matter itself, what is law at the atomic level is not law at the interstellar level. That is why our mind can never control the vital, try as hard as it might. Our body is made of organs, each with its own proper functioning. But the body is not a mere sum of all the organs. It is much more than that. So we may understand bits and pieces. That we do. But even that we don't understand fully. But to a certain extent we understand. But the totality we don't understand. That's what he's saying. Now we go to the next para. But the being and action of the infinite must not be therefore regarded as if it were a magic, void of all reason. There is, on the contrary, a greater reason in all the operations of the infinite. But it is not a mental or intellectual operation. It's a spiritual and supramental reason. There is a logic in it because there are relations and connections infallibly seen and executed. What is magic to our finite reason is the logic of the infinite. It's a greater reason, a greater logic, because it is more vast, subtle, complex in its operations. It comprehends all the data which our observation fails to seize. It deduces from them results which neither our deduction nor our induction can anticipate, because our conclusions and inferences have a meager foundation and are fallible and brittle. If we observe a happening, we judge and explain it from the result and from a glimpse of its most external constituents, circumstances or causes. But each happening is the outcome of a complex nexus of forces which we do not and cannot observe, because all forces to us are invisible. But they are not invisible to the spiritual vision of the infinite. Some of them are actualities working to produce or occasion a new actuality. Some are possibles that are near to the pre-existent actuals and in a way included in their aggregate. But there can intervene always new possibilities that suddenly become dynamic potentials and add themselves to the nexus. And behind all are imperatives, or an imperative which these possibilities are laboring to actualize. Moreover, out of the same nexus of forces, different results are possible. What will come out of them is determined by a sanction which was no doubt waiting and ready all the time, but seems to come in rapidly to intervene and alter everything, a decisive divine imperative. All this our reason cannot grasp because it is the instrument of an ignorance with a very limited vision and a small stock of accumulated and not always very certain or reliable knowledge. And because, too, it has no means of direct awareness, for this is the difference between intuition and intellect. That intuition is born of a direct awareness, while intellect is an indirect action of knowledge which constructs itself with difficulty out of the unknown from signs and indications and gathered data. But what is not evident to our reason and senses is self-evident to the infinite consciousness. And if there is a will of the infinite, it must be a will that acts in this full knowledge and is the perfect spontaneous result of a total self-evidence. It is neither a hampered evolutionary force bound by what it has evolved, nor an imaginative will acting in the void upon a free caprice. It is the truth of the infinite, affirming itself in the determinations of the finite. There is a huge amount of material here said, and we have to discuss in great detail. Okay? And we'll do that. It's a very interesting paragraph. Okay, so let's see what he's saying. What I said earlier is very clear. The finite cannot understand the infinite. Okay, so.
And the intellect cannot really understand anything at this level.
Yes, that's right. So, at this level we cannot. But as we keep going higher and higher, we understand more things and we can also anticipate more things. I'll give you a very simple example. Okay, I am standing at the crossroads, but I am on this side of the road and I am watching only the beach road. Okay, I am only watching the beach road. And I see some mad cyclist coming like a madman, full speed he is coming. Okay, and I see only that. But from the other side, the vertical side, there is a car also equally coming at full speed. I don't see that. I can't anticipate the accident that's going to take place. Now imagine I am not on the street, but I am on the terrace in the corner of the building.
You see
I am
both.
seeing both.
Yes.
And I can anticipate the accident. I know much more. A very simple example. So, even a rise in physical height can give you more knowledge. So, if you are at a height of spiritual knowledge, how much more you will come to know? It's very simple. Okay, so this is what he's saying. So, we'll look at the thing carefully and we'll see. But the being and action of the infinite must not therefore be regarded as if it were a magic, void of all reason. What we can't understand, we mustn't think that there is no reason. There is a reason, infra-rational as well as supra-rational. We can't understand it. But human beings are such that when they can't understand something, they say it is stupid. Okay, so must be therefore regarded as if it were a magic, must not be regarded as a magic, void of all reason. There is, on the contrary, a greater reason in all the operations of the infinite. But it is not a mental or intellectual, it's a spiritual and supramental reason. There is a logic in it because there are relations and connections infallibly seen and executed. What is magic to our finite reason is the logic of the infinite. I can give you another very easy example which is now very current. 100 years ago, I did not know that 2 days from now a storm is going to hit the coast. Now we have satellites up there and they know and they are telling you that 2 days from now a cyclone is going to hit your coast. So we prepare for it. So the height, physical height itself, is giving you more knowledge. So how much more will the spiritual height give you? Okay, just interesting. It's easy to understand what somebody is saying when you picture it to yourself in this way. Okay, so it's a spiritual and supramental reason. There is a logic in it because there are relations and connections infallibly seen and executed. What is magic to our finite reason is the logic of the infinite. Okay, it's a greater reason, a greater logic, because it is more vast, subtle, complex in its operations. It comprehends all the data which our observation fails to seize. It deduces from them results which are neither our deduction nor our induction, can anticipate. Now, these two terms, deduction and induction, in case you don't know, we'll just briefly touch on that. Logic uses two methods. One is induction and one is deduction. Okay? Deduction is you start from a hypothesis. Okay? Very general hypothesis, and then you come down to specifics, and then you draw a conclusion. This is logic. And the other one, induction, I'll come to it later on. So deduction is, I make a general statement. All men are mortal. Until now it's true. So all men are mortal. I take that as a hypothesis. Maybe there is somebody who is not mortal, but I don't know. I take it as a hypothesis. Okay? A supposition. Then I say, so and so is a man. Logic, Narad is a man. Therefore, Narad is mortal. This is deduction. Induction is the other way around. The induction is you go from the general, you go from the particular to the general. Deduction is you go from the general to the particular, and in induction you go from the particular to the general. I'll give you an instance. Yesterday I saw the sun rising in the east. Day before yesterday also I saw the sun rising in the east. Today also I saw the sun rising in the east. I conclude that tomorrow also the sun will rise in the east. So from specifics I am going to, not only tomorrow, but every day it will rise from the east. Is this logic correct? Not necessarily. But this is the method of logic. So logic is very limited. It starts from a hypothesis and goes to a conclusion. And both can be wrong. In the first case, all men are mortal could be wrong. We don't know. And the other one, each case it is rising from here, and I conclude, but we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. The sun may disappear. Okay, so we don't know. So logic is something which is consistent. It follows laws. So Sridhar is telling you that logical laws cannot solve the problem of the infinite. Very clear. Because in both cases, you are supposing something, and that supposition can be wrong. Okay, so because our induction can anticipate, because our conclusions and inferences have a meager foundation and are fallible and brittle. There you are. Your supposition itself may be wrong. In fact, in mathematics, you start that way. Okay, you start Euclidean geometry, you start two parallel lines never meet. I take it as an axiom. I take it as a hypothesis. I can build up a whole logical system on it. If I start from the other one, the two parallel lines meet at all points, suppose I say, I can build up a logical system on that, equally logical, but I'm starting from another axiom altogether. So it depends what your axiom is, what your supposition is, what your hypothesis is. So that's what I'm saying. It's always limited. Our suppositions are brittle and fallible. Okay? So if we observe a happening, we judge and explain it from the result. and from a glimpse of its most external constituents, circumstances or causes. But each happening is the outcome of a complex nexus of forces which we do not and cannot observe, because all forces are to us invisible. There are physical forces, there are vital forces, there are material forces, there are spiritual forces. So all those things we don't see. And they could have an effect here. That's what Srimad is saying. Okay. We'll go into more detail because it's very interesting. Okay. So, but they are not invisible to the spiritual vision of the infinite. I stop here with this sentence. Sri Aurobindo is in 1920, when Purani came to him to learn, because Purani was in Gujarat and he wanted to free India. And he came to, because he knew that Sri Aurobindo had got involved in the Alipur bomb case. So he came to Sri Aurobindo here. I have come to learn how to make bombs. Please tell me. So Sri Aurobindo said, why do you want to do all that? India is going to be free. He said, how can you say that? He said, I know for sure that it's going to be free. 1920. It took 27 years to become a reality. Okay? So Sri Aurobindo is saying, I can see that. Sri Aurobindo is seeing with the spiritual knowledge something that is going to happen. Okay?
And Mother told him the same thing.
Pardon?
Mother told him the same thing.
Yes.
India is free, she said.
Yes. She said it's already free in the subtler worlds.
Yes.
Yes. So, Purana said, but how can I be sure? Can you tell me? For instance, you can tell me, I'll believe. Then he says, in his report, he says, Sri Aurobindo looked out from the window, put his fist on the table and said, as sure as the rising of tomorrow's sun, India will be free. Then he says, for the first time in 2 years, I went back to Gujarat, but I slept peacefully. That was the amount of... You've seen him, na? Purani?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I knew him well.
A tremendous, vital person.
Tremendous. He was a wrestler.
Very restless. A wrestler also.
Wrestler and restless. Yes, yes.
He used to go to the Arizona Center.
Arizona Center and California Center.
Okay.
And I met him there. He gave me my first copy of Savitri. And he gave me my first copy of his book, Savitri, An Approach and a Study.
Yeah.
Wonderful man.
Yeah. No doubt about it. Because after he passed away, Sri Aurobindo made a remark about him and said that he is with Sri Aurobindo. And he is playing with the supramental substance. Like a child, she said. So he was a great man, no doubt. But from the ordinary point of view, he had so many defects, So we always judge a man from the lowest, but we should judge a man from highest, but we can't judge. Because we can't see. That's what Srimad is saying. So, this is the example, okay? But they are not invisible to the spiritual vision of the infinite. Some of them are, now this is very interesting what he's going to say. Some of them are actualities, working to produce or occasion a new actuality. Some are possibles that are near to the pre-existent actuals and in a way included in their aggregate. But there can intervene always new possibilities that suddenly become dynamic potentials and add themselves to the nexus. And behind all are imperatives or an imperative which these possibilities are laboring to actualize. So, we'll try and see what he's saying here, because so many he's using. Look at all the words. Actualities, number one. Then, new actuality, number two. Then he's saying possibles. Then he's saying pre-existent actualities, in a way included in their aggregate. There can intervene always new possibilities that suddenly become dynamic potentials. So we'll have to look at all these and exactly what is meaning. Okay, so very interesting. And add themselves to the nexus. And behind all are imperatives or an imperative which these possibilities are laboring to actualize. So, to understand this, we have to go back to the basic idea of the one becoming the many. If you understand this basic one becoming the many, then what he's saying here, we can understand what he's saying. So, before the creation of the universe, there is only the divine, only Brahman. That's the transcendent. Okay? The world has not yet been created. Let's imagine that. He is the only one. But the one has to become the many. That's what we see in the physical world.
And that is creation.
Yes, it's a creation. So, in between the two, there are gradations. The one becomes, first of all, we can see that even biologically, the one cell divides itself into 2, then it divides itself into 4, then it divides into 8, geometric progression. 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. It goes on like that. The one becoming the many. So, here also, when the one is becoming the many, it produces grades. And the more the many come in, the production is infinite. Therefore, opposites also can come in. This idea we have to grasp. Okay? No? Because the creation is infinite. It doesn't stop only some possibilities. Every possibility is expressed. That's why in the physical world we have dualities. If there is hot, there is cold. If there is cruelty, there is kindness. If there is jealousy, there is love. If there is hate, there is love. If there is, let us say, miserliness, then there is generosity. All the opposites are there. Why? Because he is creating infinitely. The one becoming the many infinitely. So, this is all a medley and a jumble. He is talking of the aggregate. These are the aggregates. So, when this is happening, there are different things. Let's start with the word imperative. Okay. The one is a Brahman who is going to create all these things. Everything that is going to be created is there in the Brahman, but unmanifest. Okay? Like the seed, which itself is, it's got a specific thing, but the tree is going to produce a tree. But the tree is not yet manifested. So this is the Brahman is a seed of the universe. In fact, in the Gita as well as in the Vedas, we have the image of the tree with its roots up and its branches below. Urdha umulo adha shakha. Okay? The roots are above and the branches are below. So the one becoming the many. So at every level, the many becomes more and more complex, more and more complex. So, and they start becoming realities. But can all the realities become realities in the physical world? No. Because here there is a limitation and there is a finiteness. The infinite will produce everything, but not at one go. It will produce in different times. It will go on producing infinitely. The very good example is the which he himself gives. Air travel. 400 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci could think about it, but it was not possible to make it a reality. So all the possibilities will become one day real here, but not altogether. So this is what if you keep in mind, some are possibles, some are imperatives. It is bound to happen. So when Sri Aurobindo is saying, India is sure going to be free, it's an imperative. But when will it come into existence? Doubtful. We don't know, because it's a combination of so many different possibilities. Now, with this idea, let's look at what he's saying. Okay, so some of them are actualities, working to produce or occasion a new actuality. Actuality is what we see in the physical world. Okay, let's say cats are an actuality. But in time, maybe in 100 years, they will mutate and produce another species. That's always possible. Everything, there's a mutation and there's a constant evolution. So, an actuality in the physical world is busy producing another new actuality. That's one possibility in the physical world. Okay? So then, some are possibles that are near to the pre-existent actuals. The actuals which are there, okay? As I said, the cat or the dog, okay? Maybe another species is there waiting to become a reality in the physical world. So that's what it means by pre-existent and near to the pre-existent actuals, and in a way included in their aggregate. In their totality, it is already there. Then, but there can intervene always new possibilities that suddenly become dynamic potentials and add themselves to the nexus. Now, what's a dynamic potential? And he's saying, behind all are imperatives, or an imperative which these possibilities are laboring to actualize. The word dynamic potential we'll try and understand. Okay, so does a seed have the potential to produce a tree? Yes. It has a possible potential. Okay? But is it dynamic? It depends on the conditions. Suppose I take that seed and put it on my table. It will never produce a tree. But if I take that seed and put it into the ground and water it, it becomes a dynamic potential. You see the difference? So from those words we have to understand exactly what he's saying. So it becomes a dynamic potential. So all these are there. There are dynamic potentials, there are possible potentials, and this combination of all these things is a huge thing which man cannot understand. That's what he's saying. Interesting, isn't it? The whole thing. So
what is this imperative?
Yeah.
Which these possibles are laboring to actualize.
Yes, that's right. Like Sri Ramdas, India is bound to be free. Mm-hmm. It's an imperative. It's a command from the supermind. But when is it going to become? On the way, so many different things can come. And that's exactly what happened in India's case. Yes. It became free. But Pakistan came into existence. And later on, Bangladesh became an existence. Mm-hmm. So, it can go into so many directions. Okay? Even in science, we have the same thing. If someone was trying to discover something, and instead of discovering what he was trying to get, he discovered penicillin. I don't remember the details, but that's what penicillin was discovered by chance. So these are the possibilities that the Sri Ramdas is talking about. Interesting, isn't it?
Very.
So, and these possibilities are laboring to actualize. Moreover, out of the same nexus of forces, different results are possible. What will come out of them is determined by a sanction which was no doubt waiting and ready all the time, but seems to come in rapidly to intervene and alter everything, a decisive divine imperative. So, look at he talks of a sanction. So, what is meant by sanction? The world conditions will allow it, it's a sanction. Universe is allowing a sanction. Exactly, we can again think of the air travel. Okay? When the aeroplane was discovered, okay, it was sanctioned by the universe. The laws of aerodynamics was known, lighter materials were discovered, which was not possible at the time of Leonardo da Vinci, because there was no sanction. But now there is a sanction of the universe, and it's possible to do it. So that's what he means by sanction. Okay? In fact, he uses the word sanction very interestingly. He says, all this time, there was no sanction for the supermind. But now the time has come when there is a sanction for the supermind.
I know the supramental is a truth.
Yes. The sanction has been given.
And is in the very nature of things inevitable.
Yes. That's right. And he uses the word sanction for that. Okay? That's why the word sanction is so interesting. Yes. Who is sanctioning? Either the divine or conditions in the physical world also are sanctioning. Okay? So, Moreover, out of the same nexus of force. Now see, even if you take air travel, okay, there is this, first of all it was the Zeppelin, okay. Then there was a huge accident and then that disappeared. Then heavier than air machines started, okay. They also are now very current. But there are other possibilities like helicopters, and now we have come to drones, which is something fantastic. So different variations, new possibilities coming from actuals. That's what Srimad is talking about. Okay? So this whole para is so interesting. If you go into each word and see what he's saying, it becomes fascinating. Okay? So all this our reason cannot grasp, because it's the instrument of an ignorance with a very limited vision and a small stock of accumulated and not always very certain or reliable knowledge. And because too, it has no means of direct awareness, for this is the difference between intuition and intellect. That intuition is born of a direct awareness, while intellect is an indirect action of knowledge. I'll stop here and we'll see what he means by direct awareness and indirect action. Direct awareness is knowledge by identity. As we discussed earlier, there is a knower and there is something to be known, and you have instruments of knowledge which connect the two. That's indirect knowledge. If my senses are not there, I will never know the physical world. So my knowledge of the physical world through senses is indirect knowledge. But as I keep going higher and higher in consciousness, my consciousness can become the same as the consciousness of that which is to be known. That is direct knowledge, and that is identity. Knowledge by identity. That's what it means. Okay? So look at the words. That intuition is a direct awareness without any intervention of other things. Okay? That's direct awareness and indirect. That intuition is born of a direct awareness, while intellect is an indirect action. It is using instruments to know what it has to know. Okay? So, and those instruments can go on changing, which constructs itself with difficulty out of the unknown from signs and indications and general data. Now that's also we have to understand what he's saying, which constructs itself with difficulty out of the unknown from signs and indications and gathered data. So, all thoughts are constructions. This you have to understand. Okay? Whenever I am trying to understand something, I try to fit it to what I have in my mind. If it doesn't fit, I don't understand. It has to fit into it. It becomes consistent with what other things I already know. Then we say, I have understood. But sometimes, if it doesn't fit, we say we don't understand. So we have to construct actually. We have to construct in our mind. All mental knowledge is construction. It is construction with mental material, with mental substance. You don't construct only with matter. You don't construct a table out of wood only. You can construct even thoughts out of thought substance. So that's why it is a construction. So when you make your mind silent, no more constructions. The reality comes in and replaces it. So what he means by construction is all scientific knowledge is construction. Okay?
And all our thoughts are construction.
Yes, absolutely.
So we know nothing.
No, really nothing.
Yeah.
We know something for practical purposes.
Yes.
But we don't know the entire thing. So Siddhartha says that our mind is not a total ignorance. It's a semi-ignorance. Okay. That's a problem. So this is what he's saying, which constructs itself with difficulty out of the unknown from signs and indications and gathered data. Where science is doing that. Before it comes to a conclusion, it gathers data and then considers them and comes to a conclusion. If the data is not there, you can't conclude anything. So how accurate is his language? No? So, gathered data. But what is not evident to our reason and senses is self-evident to the infinite consciousness. And if there is a will in the infinite, it must be a will that acts in this full knowledge and is the perfect spontaneous result of a total self-evidence. What he's saying is that at the highest level, will and knowledge are always one at the highest level. But at our level, they are two different things. I may have the knowledge, but I may not have the will to do something. I may have the will to do something, I don't know how to do it, I don't have the knowledge. But there, both are there. Chit and Shakti.
Yet he says, and if there is a will, capital W, of the infinite, capital I.
That means at
if
the highest
there
level.
is that. He says, if there is a will.
It's a supposition, because
a supposition.
He always takes you by the hand and leads you gently.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly.
He's suggesting to you. But he knows very well what he's saying. But still, he never imposes any ideas on you.
In Savitri, it's always as if. As if this, as if that. Yes.
Okay, so it's you see how big the para is and how interesting it is. So, and if there is a will of the infinite, it must be a will that acts in this full knowledge. And so why is he saying that? Because there is only one at the highest level. So if there is a will, it is necessarily knowledge, because there is only one. There again there is logic, no? So it is, and the perfect spontaneous result of a total self-evidence. If knowledge is there and will also is there, and it's perfect, then its manifestation is going to be 100% sure. It is neither a hampered evolutionary force bound by what it has evolved, nor an imaginative will acting in the void upon a free caprice. It is the truth of the infinite affirming itself in the determinations of the finite. The determinations of the finite are all the forms in the physical world. And the truth of the infinite is all the potential things which are waiting to manifest in the physical world. So that's what he's saying in this complicated para. Very interesting. It is evident that such a consciousness and will. So now he is saying, a consciousness and will, he has spoken about it earlier. Chit Shakti need not act in harmony with the conclusions of our limited reason or according to a procedure familiar to it and approved of by our constructed notions. All ideas are constructed, or in subjection to an ethical reason, morality, working for a limited and fragmentary good. All morality is all fragmentary good only, never the complete good. It might and does admit things deemed by our reason irrational and unethical, because that was necessary for the final and total good and for the working out of a cosmic purpose. What seems to us irrational or reprehensible in relation to a partial set of facts, motives, desiderata, might be perfectly rational and approvable in relation to a much vaster motive and totality of data and desiderata. Reason, with its partial vision, sets up constructed conclusions which it strives to turn into general rules of knowledge and action, and it compels into its rule by some mental device or gets rid of what does not suit with it. An infinite consciousness would have no such rules. It would have instead large intrinsic truths governing automatically conclusion and result, but adapting them differently and spontaneously to a different total of circumstances, so that By this pliability and free adaptation, it might seem to the narrower faculty to have no standards whatever. In the same way, we cannot judge of the principle and dynamic operation of infinite being by the standards of finite existence. What might be impossible for the one would be normal and self-evidently natural states and motives for the greater, freer reality. It is this that makes the difference between our fragmentary mind consciousness constructing integers out of its fractions and an essential and total consciousness, vision and knowledge. It is not indeed possible, so long as we are compelled to use reason as our main support, for it to abdicate altogether in favor of an undeveloped or half-organized intuition. But it is imperative on us, in a consideration of the infinite and its being and action, to enforce on our reason an utmost plasticity and open it to an awareness of the larger states and possibilities of that which we are striving to consider. It will not do to apply our limited and limiting conclusions to that which is illimitable. If we concentrate only on one aspect and treat it as a whole, we illustrate the story of the blind men and the elephant. Each of the blind inquirers touched a different part and concluded that the whole animal was some object resembling the part of which he had had the touch. An experience of some one aspect of the infinite is valid in itself, but we cannot generalize from it that the infinite is that alone, nor would it be safe to view the rest of the infinite in the terms of that aspect and exclude all other viewpoints of spiritual experience. The infinite is at once an essentiality, a boundless totality, and a multitude. All these have to be known in order to know truly the infinite. To see the parts alone and the totality not at all, or only as a sum of the parts, is a knowledge, but also at the same time an ignorance. To see the totality alone and ignore the parts is also a knowledge, and at the same time an ignorance. For a part may be greater than the whole because it belongs to the transcendence. To see the essence alone because it takes us back straight towards the transcendence and negate the totality and the parts is an penultimate knowledge. But here too there is a capital ignorance. A whole knowledge must be there, and the reason must become plastic enough to look at all sides, all aspects, and seek through them for that in which they are one. So, the whole paragraph is a big one, but he gives the example of that elephant, and that we'll just quickly touch upon, because we'll go into detail next time. But the story of the elephant is 7 blind men. One touches the trunk and says, oh, the elephant is like a pillar, okay? And someone touches the flank and says, oh, it's like a wall. And someone touches the tail and says it's like a rope. And someone touches the ear and says it's like a fan. So this is what our knowledge is. We are seeing one aspect and concluding and trying to say the whole thing. That's the story of the elephant. This was I think, given by Ramakrishna, the image. Srimanta says about Ramakrishna that all his knowledge is from the intuitive plane. All his knowledge and all his examples used to be from the intuitive plane.
He doesn't say over mind.
He says intuitive plane.
Okay, very good.
So you could say that that's the minimum that he would say.
Yeah.
You could say that. Okay, we stop here today, and next time we'll redo this para. This also is very interesting, but not as interesting as the one we read today.
Namaste, and thank you for joining us. We will have our next talk on Friday, essays on the Gita, and Saturday, the synthesis of yoga. Thank you. Thank you, Ranga.